Is the Bayeux Tapestry an invasion of England? Welcome to Mark and Pete. 1,000-year-old embroidered news bulletin is looking like it's going to cross the English Channel. Yes, this is Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first thought.
A point in time. The Bayeux Tapestry is wide and narrow and depicts the Battle of Hastings in many parts. But most folk today remember the infamous arrow, which caught the eye of an early form of darts. Yes, indeed. Well, indeed, the Battle of Hastings. Yes, King Harold will certainly remember this for a more of a pointed story. Yes, in 1066, the Norman-French army of William, Duke of Normandy, and his English army under the Anglo-Saxon King Harold Godwinson began the Norman conquest of England. Well, of course, we all know that, sadly, yes, Harold faced the deficit of an invasion, but more importantly, he lost his life through an arrow. What's more important is, of course, the Bayeux Tapestry. Now, this was actually produced by a series of nuns that actually depicted the full battle scene. Now, we're going to talk about this in more detail, but more importantly is that it's actually making its way to England. Now, Mr. Pete, I do ask you, this is probably the most famous tapestry ever produced in the history of mankind. Why on earth would anyone want to transport it over 100 miles to try and get it to England? Is this a mistake?
Yes, it's like the invasion happening all over again, isn't it? Hence our
Correct.
title, yeah. Well, I think, first of all, the displaying of it, I think, is important to have that link with history. We always like to give a Bible quote just about our subject. Psalm 78, verse 4, if folks want to look it up. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, it says. And it's talking about things like military victories, but it could be things happening in the past we should tell to our children and children's children. Knowledge of our history is important. It gives you a sense of belonging. It helps you to understand your tribe, so to speak. It gives a sense of who you are. Bringing it over to England seems risky, and you don't want to lose something like the Bayeux Tapestry. I mean, I've seen pictures of it. I've never seen it in person, but there is something about real history, the actual Bayeux Tapestry, that makes a difference. So I understand wanting to move it, and I think the risk can be minimized. So I'm not against this idea. I think that being able to not physically touch, but to be in touch, shall we say, with real history is an important thing. And the Bayeux Tapestry is a remarkable news bulletin, as I put it at the start of the episode, from the time. Imagine, in how long ago was the actual event? About 1,000 years ago. And that's what it's for, isn't it? The display. It's just to celebrate the 1,000-year anniversary. Imagine, an episode of Mark and Pete being transported around the world in 1,000 years' time. Could happen.
Well, indeed. Well, of course, obviously, when it comes to the French, there are many who are very concerned, of course, when it comes to the safety of the actual tapestry. Now, the actual tapestry itself will be leaving Bayeux for only the third time in its history, and it will be basically displayed in the British Museum in England. Now, serious reservations about this journey has been raised by the French art world because they're saying that the tapestry is too fragile and, more importantly, historically too important to move. Now, the reason that this is happening is twofold. One, they're updating the museum in which it actually appears, and the other side is a diplomatic gesture. So there have been actually already two dry runs, facsimiles essentially, not the actual piece, where the culture minister in Paris is confident that technical difficulties will be overcome. Now, I will say that they are spending a lot of money on trying to actually get this right. I will say that there is such technology is such that the two dummy runs so far are using technology where it can absorb shocks. So remember, even though that this is just a tapestry made of fabric, of course, even the slightest of movements could break up the fabric, and that's the concern.
Yes,
Now, they have said that this, in theory, will help to make sure that it's transported correctly. The other one, which I would say is absolutely crucial, is light, because
yeah,
light is
yeah,
one of the things that can fade the fabric. So, Mr. Pete, there is the logistic side, but let's come on to the historical side.
yes.
There is some other people who champion the idea that this is just stirring up old rivalry between the English and the French. What say you about this?
Yes. Well, I think that that's of course a good thing because, we are Mark and Pete hate the French. So, well, no, yeah, no, not really, but it's one of those things that all English people are meant to hate the French. So, stirring up rivalry, well, it's a bit difficult to say that in that, if you talk about the World Cup win by England back in the day, there's this argument about a particular goal actually involved the ball crossing the line, and that stirs up old rivalries. Not with France, obviously, but it
No, that was with
right.
Germany.
But in this case, there's no question that the arrow actually went into Harold's eye, and that
Well,
they actually, well, there's no question that they actually won the battle. Let's put it that way.
that's true.
Yeah, yeah. Whether or not he crossed the line with the arrow, but so I think actually that this shared history brings the countries together, doesn't it? Does it really stir up old rivalries after 1,000 years? Maybe I'm reading
Yeah.
this wrong.
Well, the interesting thing is coming back to what most people remember, which of course is the fact that King Harold lost his life, but most importantly was claiming that he died from an arrow that went into his eye, which in turn went into his brain, which of course obviously would have killed him. Now, some people will say that yes, it's possible that he was hit with an arrow, that the likelihood is he was probably struck to the ground and actually probably mortally wounded by a sword from a knight or someone who was in the battle. We will never know. Of course, that's not the point. The point is, it's iconic, isn't it, Mr. Pete?
Yes.
That the
Well,
going
it
back
it
to the
is.
tapestry,
Yes.
trying to find the image of Harold with the arrow in is what most people are searching for.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, now going back to the tapestries, you say, an interesting point about moving it. Now, I don't know whether if I'm right on this. What I'm sure of is that it's not actually a tapestry. It's wool on some sort of fabric. Is it wool on silk? That it's that sort of wool on linen, maybe. But well, surely that makes it actually more delicate. You got two different sorts of fabric pulling against each other. But anyway, moving on from that, I think that if the technology is in place and we are moving it, is it stirring up old rivalries? What are the issues to do with remembering this event? I think it's a great event, and if people, not the actual battle, although that was might have been entertaining to watch, um, even with one eye. But I think that there's a misunderstanding that it was basically the English people versus the French. I mean, was it that? Wasn't it two tribes, two rival kings fighting each other? Moreover, because of course
Yeah.
William, the man himself, who at that point wasn't known as the Conqueror, but became known as that for obvious reasons after the event. He was a rival to the throne. He had claims to the throne of England, as did Harold, and they were just fighting it out. So, like a lot of this, it's when wars are started, it's often started by the elite, by the leaders, and not by the common people who just suffer through it.
Yeah, well, indeed. Well, coming back to the actual physical structure of this, so you're right. It was actually an embroidery, which was actually done
Oh,
on
right,
linen,
yeah, yeah. Oh,
linen
linen,
itself.
right? Okay, yeah,
And it was ironically created in the years following the Duke William of Normandy's conquest in England in
yeah,
1066. So
yeah.
it didn't actually take place in 1066 with the actual embroidery. That took
No,
place later.
yeah,
Now, the
sure.
interesting thing is the actual piece itself has been kept in Bayeux Cathedral for centuries and was not rediscovered until the 1700s. And in 1803, Napoleon, yes, Napoleon Bonaparte, brought it to Paris as a propaganda tool for his planned invasion of England.
Right.
And of course, it was then moved to Paris in World War II.
Yeah.
And of course, it then went on from there, and eventually it went back to Bayeux. But the point being is, it's had a bit of a history, hasn't it? A bit of a tour, sort of lost, found again, and etc. But what I will say here is, it is yet again another depiction of tyranny, isn't it?
Yes.
Invasion, tyranny. We've had Napoleon grabbing it. And all sort of things. I mean, really, what's his history for the future? I wonder what on earth,
Yes.
what the
Yeah,
next
but I
phase
mean,
in his journey is going to
but
be.
this is why we need to remember these events. You see, it's not celebrating such events, even though it's a battle and battles involve people dying and lots of bad stuff. It, however bad you think it is, whether it's talking about tyranny and people, one tyrant taking over for another, however you look at it, it's still important to remember these things. They're history. They're part of our story, and we need to pass on this story to the people to come as those children that we have, the children of the nation. Such that we have our story. And in this case, it's a joint story between us and the French, and that's okay, I guess.
Well, indeed. And so, for our listeners, what do they think about this? Are they concerned about the artifact itself? Or are they actually delighted that, as you say, Mr. Pete, this is a great piece of work that sort of reinforces the importance of history? Either way, for those who want to go and see it, keep an eye out on the British Museum.